Good afternoon. Welcome to Northwestern Oklahoma State University's Visual Guest Artist Lecture Series. Today we're joined by visual artist Nikki from Richmond, Virginia. Ms. Painter works with installation work and drawings. Thank you for joining us, Nikki.
Thank you for having me.
So please tell us about your work processes, what got you started, what your inspirations are, and what you're doing currently, and where you hope to go in the future with your current series of work.
Oh, wow. That's a lot to talk about. So can I get going with the PowerPoint? Is that good to help structure this?
Sounds good. That's, yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
So hi to everybody who's in the class. Thank you for having me. I'm going to show you some images of work and talk about the works. So, hey. So feel free to jump in with questions at any time. We do have a little bit of a video delay, so hey, what's up? So just bear with me on that. Let's see if I can get this PowerPoint going here. Let's see, I'll do this and
full screen.
All right, I think I got it, but let's see from the beginning. All right, so like I said, I can't see you guys right now, so just let me know if you want to, if you have questions about anything.
Okay, we're good on our
so
side.
This is a, what's that?
We're good on our side. You can get started.
Okay, awesome. So this is a recent drawing from, let's see, 2012, 2011-ish. That I want to stick this guy up here because it's a recent work, so it kind of shows the vein in which I'm working now. And I do primarily consider myself, as Jave said, a drawing-based artist. But over the last couple of years, I have also started working in installation. So this is a more recent installation-based piece. This work was called Eclipse, and it was shown at a space in Virginia, Greater Ruston Art Center. And then also recently at the school where I'm adjuncting VCU. So this work is a detail from the piece. And you see it's got a lot of found objects, and I'm working with cardboard boxes and faux foliage and wooden blocks, and then painting these things and thinking about pattern. One of the things that I'm really interested in my current work is creating a sense of very complex space. Evoking a sort of sense of mood. So for this piece, Eclipse, I was thinking a little bit about like what it's like when you're a kid in the woods at night, or what it feels like when you read stories about people in the woods at night, you know, this sort of magical, mysterious kind of feeling that you have when you're a child, especially that anything is possible. So those were sorts of feelings I was thinking about there. One of the things I want to talk to you guys about is sort of how I came to be making the work I'm making now. And this is a drawing from when I was where you guys are, when I was an undergrad. I kind of near the time that I was finishing my painting and printmaking degree, I was really interested in mark making and line. This is not the best image of this drawing, but I just stuck it in here because you can start to see a little bit the way that I'm using squiggly lines to build value as opposed to, you know, more traditional value systems like cross-hatching or shading. So that time I was just really interested in ideas of line, the way line could move the viewer across the page, set up a sense of space, establish value structure. Line was where it was at for me. So at the time I was an undergrad, I was really interested in drawing very representationally, very realistically. That was super important to me then, in addition to lots of other kind of really narrative images. I don't have good slides, unfortunately, of some of those works, but I had a lot of kind of crazy, sort of spooky storytelling images that I was working on in undergrad. But once I got out of undergrad, I went on for a little while to teach at the school system. I taught K-5 art because that was a job that I knew about, you know, at the end of my painting degree, I had a feeling of like, wow, I am really not sure how to be an artist. But I think I can be a teacher. So that was what I went on and did for a couple of years. And while I was doing that, I was still really feeling compelled to make my own work and thinking, you know, I still want to be an artist. I just don't know how to do this. So during that time, I started to really hone in on my interest in line. You know, I was talking about with that hand drawing earlier, the sort of interest in the way line could set up a sense of space and could move your eye across the page. So I started to make these really intuitive line drawings where I would just be using paint marker and making these kind of big curly forms across the picture plane. And then I would respond to those by either outlining certain areas of them or cutting out negative spaces and then collaging them on top of other sort of sets of those kind of curly lines and then other found images. So at that time, working a lot with this sense of automatic line and found imagery was a really big thing I was into.
Okay.
Also, in making that particular series of works, I started to think about how I could incorporate real space with this, and so I started to experiment with setting the layers apart from one another, like having little structures, little foam structures in between each layer of paper, so there was actually like half an inch to an inch or more of space between each of the layers, and that started to create a more complex kind of sense of space, which is something you can, you know, it has been a theme for me pretty much since I've been interested in image making. Is just how do I make a complex space, a space that feels real but also feels unexpected. Okay. This is another example of that. Question?
No, go ahead.
Did you have a question? Was it a question?
No question.
So this is, okay, just let me know if there is, because right now I'm just talking to pictures. It's kind of a funny experience.
I do that.
So this is another example of that working. Oh yeah, talk to pictures.
Yeah, that's right. So don't worry.
So another example, yeah. Another example of this sort of curly Q mark making situation is happening in this one, again with that real layered space, like the structures between the layers that set the layers apart from one another and create those really nice shadows that you're seeing within some of the negative spaces. I really enjoyed this process of working, but at the same time I had a feeling that it wasn't really my own because of the way that I was working with so many found images. You can see this, the image that you can see inside of the white curly cues that was taken from another art magazine. And so that's an image of another artist's work. So I was doing some types of appropriation, but I didn't really feel comfortable with that. So trying to find some way to move away from that way of working was my task in grad school. When I moved on to grad school in DC, the first set of drawings that I was working with, total automatic line drawing situation, and was dealing more with just looking at kind of objects around me and taking silhouettes from those things and overlaying them and using lots of intricate, once again, complex space.
Okay.
Something about that kind of space in the work wasn't quite, didn't really feel specific enough, or it just felt like, I don't know how to explain it. It wasn't the right kind of space. I think not specific enough is the best way of characterizing it. So I was continuing to work with, or maybe possibly even not complex enough. So I was continuing to experiment with different kinds of media, ways of layering them, ways of masking underlying layers and revealing certain parts. to think about types of spaces within the picture plane.
This particular image reminds me more about pattern making in some ways, especially with the checkerboard in the background and some of the underdrawings coming through. I don't know if that's like a brain-looking thingy, a blood splatter-looking thingy, and some cloud formations on the left-hand side. Was that an appropriation, or was that something that you drew in there purposefully?
Yeah, those were more like the cloud-type shapes were more appropriations that I had from pattern paper that I had on hand at that time.
Okay.
And then the house shape that was in the background was actually a drawing of a childhood residence. So at that point, I hadn't moved entirely away from appropriation. I was still kind of trying to figure out, how do I cobble together an image? Like, can I use some of these found things? Can I use some of these other things from memory? Like, how does it work? How can I put together an image?
Right.
But yeah, the patterning definitely has a sense of meditation and obsessive mark making to it.
Okay, great.
All right, so big shift in this image. What happened during this time also was still looking around, like, what kinds of images can I use? How can I was on the way to class one day, and I happened past this library demolition site. And it was just this gigantic mess of shards of crumpled up metal and concrete rubble and just all kinds of amazing twisted up forms that I got so interested in. I had to take a ton of pictures of it. And I started drawing from these images. And I felt pretty good about that type of appropriation because these were all images that I had personally sourced. Like, this was a subject that I had happened upon. It was what I had chosen.
Right.
This is probably a terrible one for you guys, but this is an example. This is an example of a drawing made from some of those demolition debris. Can you guys see that at all?
Sorry, the audio is cutting out.
Okay.
Could you repeat?
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Could you repeat what you just said?
I said that this image, I'm kind of concerned about whether or not it's actually showing up for you guys very well.
Yeah, we can see it.
Is an example. Okay. Is an example of drawing made from those demolition debris.
Okay.
So through the process of drawing, these things started to take on another kind of quality. Like, they started to look like ocean life, or they started to feel much more organic than the actual subject matter, the source, which was something I was interested in, how the process of abstraction could kind of transform this demolition debris.
Could you talk about the color selection for these drawings? How did you choose these colors as opposed to more the grim colors of the original photographs?
Yeah, my color selection in general tends to be pretty intuitive and rooted in like 80s aesthetics. Like, I tend to really gravitate toward fluorescent colors, pinks, purples, and some of that does have to do with nostalgia about childhood, but it also has to do, particularly the fluorescent colors, like in paintings that I use, gouache paintings, has a lot to do with this feeling of intensity that I'm really interested in conveying. Because, we have associations with fluorescence of, if you think about construction sites, there are like fluorescent caution signs telling you to be alert, be aware. Or if you think about animals that have fluorescent coloring in nature, it tends to be for the purpose of attracting a mate, or in some way just raising your awareness. So intensity is something I'm really interested in color selection. Intensity versus quiet. Those are the types of things that I think about. So all the time that I was working with these demolition debris, I started to think about you know, what does it actually mean to be using these things as subject matter? And I started to think about a sort of a timeline for those objects, those found. So the demolition debris was on one side, where things had been torn down, making way for new buildings. And then probably within a month of making those drawings, I happened upon a construction site in this really strange pit in DC. And I started noticing all of the kinds of objects that were in that construction site, specifically ladders, lots of scaffolding shapes. And I was thinking about how along this timeline of things, these kinds of characters might interact with one another. Like how could this be a story, all of these things together? So this was a ladder shape that I got really interested in and was using in a couple different drawings.
Okay.
So from that point, I started making these drawings that was showing like ladder objects in some kind of relationship with the demolition debris. But the demolition debris tend to take on this other sort of characteristic of looking like weird organic space debris or like bushes or something else. They feel much more organic. So I was thinking about these things coming together and possibly fighting against each other or just having some sort of interaction. This was the case, like you can see the debris are coming down
Right.
to overtake the ladders and the other more quiet, sort of helpless little objects. Whereas in this one, the ladders and the more quiet gray objects are holding back the colorful, the demolition debris and the things in the background.
Great.
Yeah, question?
No question. Keep going.
Okay. Around that time, I also started to work more with objects. I started to play around with just really little paper cutouts and also little pieces of wood, like model wood, balsa wood, or little blocks that you could purchase at Michael's. Starting to think about the idea of, once again, real spaces, like how these characters might come together in a real space. Not the greatest picture, but that was from that time period. The main reason that I was thinking about this kind of process was from being influenced specifically by the work of Judy Pfaff, who is an artist that I believe I saw while I was in grad school. I saw some of her work and just got excited about it. If you don't know Judy Pfaff's work, please check her out. She does amazing stuff. This work is from a while ago. Like, she's still making work now. She still makes amazing work. Please look her up. Judy Pfaff is an artist who's been a major influence on me. Jessica Stockholder is another one. Sarah Z, all amazing installation artists.
What about Crystal?
I highly recommend them. Yes, Crystal Wagner is amazing as well. And I love the relationship between her little box pieces to her like giant building size installations. I think that is so interesting to see the different scale kinds of work that she makes.
Yeah, I think you guys
have you guys looked at her?
No, I haven't shown them in my class yet, but I see some similarities between your work and hers.
Yeah, I love her work. So having gone from those little tiny kind of model-esque objects in a studio, like playing around with small scale stuff, I did end up making an installation-based piece for my thesis show at the end of grad school. So, you know, a lot of stuff happened between that little tiny model image versus this one. Some very horrible kinds of configurations of objects out in a hallway. Just like some really embarrassing bad stuff happened between then and then this piece. But this was a great exercise in working very, very large scale.
Good.
I think this piece was in the vicinity of like 30 feet tall total.
Was that very difficult to install?
It really wasn't based on the help I had. I mean, you know, we had a professional lift and a lift operator in the museum, and you know, so that was all it really took to get the high stuff up there.
Okay.
And so no, it really wasn't. It was a really breezy installation.
Good.
So more stuff about installation. You know, after grad school, I didn't really have this kind of access to really large scale spaces, professional lifts, people who could help me with that kind of sort of tall, very architecturally stable structure. So on my own, this was one of the first installation pieces that I made for a space down in Southern Virginia. So, you know, there are some fun things happening here, like the way that I'm using the planes, like you can see in the lower right-hand corner, the like flat plane that's behind the ladders, and then the triangular shapes that are jutting out from that. So there were some fun plays with space that were happening in this piece. Another installation a little bit later was this one where I was starting to, or trying to get back to that sense of those kind of like debris structure pieces versus the more architectural ladders and scaffolding forms. Like how are those things interacting within a space?
Okay.
The shadows were really, really great for the piece. For a show in Nashville, I put together this little installation that I was thinking about. Would you say what's the scale?
Yes.
I believe this one is about 12 feet tall by 12 feet wide and maybe 10 feet deep, I think is something like that.
Okay.
But for this work, instead of thinking about a really specific interaction of objects like the demolition debris versus the ladders, I was trying to think a little bit more intuitively about the objects and creating a sort of experience for the viewer. And I was thinking about the type of experience you might have when you are walking somewhere and you just sort of happen upon this really lovely mess. Like say you're in someone's backyard and you just realize that things are really messy and chaotic, but at the same time, just the growth that's happening, the sort of life that is bursting out of planners is just so amazing. So I was thinking about that sort of moment for this piece.
So that's why there's all the bright colors and the rainbow colors is represent the light of it.
Yes, once again, that idea of intensity.
Great. So you want people to walk You want people to walk around the object as opposed to through it, like this piece, or?
For this one, I wouldn't know. Nobody's walking through this. You're really just sort of encountering it.
Okay.
But for this piece, yeah, you did have more of a chance to walk among the groupings. So from that last sort of situation of just arranging objects to create a moment, I did go back to the idea of thinking about sorts of interactions of groups of objects. And for this piece, I tried to think again about how if those little ladders or groups of boxes were almost performing in the roles of characters and interacting with one another. To me, this was sort of what it might feel like when you're on a playground in elementary school, or maybe even what it feels like sometimes in high school, like the way that people arrange themselves in particular groups or particular cliques. This work was called Play.
Okay.
All right, this piece was called Cave. And then it was back to that idea again of creating a moment with the objects, almost thinking about some weird alien landscape. So of course the cave part would be this little part down here at the bottom. And I should have stuck in a detail of this piece, but there's actually black lights inside of the cave, or the little like fort or shelter structure down at the bottom, that makes for a really great glowing inside with all the fluorescent colors.
How large is this piece?
And this is just from another. This one I would say is about 9 feet tall by, this would be the front of it. So it would be like 9 feet tall. And then I want to say maybe about 8 feet wide. And then looking at it from this direction, from the right-hand wall to all the way to the left, that would be the depth. And I think that was maybe about 12 feet.
Okay. So would your installation be
then
more,
even more recent?
would your installation works be more of a like a drawing in the three-dimensional space?
I do think about them a lot like that. Some of these, I tend to think about them more as being drawing-based works, yes.
Okay.
This piece was from 2012, and this particular configuration of it was installed at Fosdick Nelson Gallery at Alfred University in New York. This was a great space because it was huge, so the piece really did exist kind of like a drawing. You know, if we think about drawings as sort of like a little configuration of marks within a blank page, that really felt that way with the amount of negative space that this was allowed to exist in. So if you can see this little kind of brightly colored area over toward the left background, this is a detail of that area. So once again, working with found objects. And color, thinking a lot about color.
So you have a lot of very neutral grays, whites, and then all of a sudden has this small explosion of bright colors. Could you talk about a little bit more about that, the intensity?
Mm-hmm. Well, for this particular piece, I was thinking about, and this angle image isn't the best to show this, but I was thinking about what if there was this sort of very quiet setting, all this white space, and then there's this little condensed area of the bright colors, and what if they are starting to spread out into the space? So around this area of the bright colors, some of the objects start to trickle into the white space, and there are surfaces of the boxes within that kind of like middle configuration that share the color. So it was called spread. So it was the idea of the color starting to spread out and infiltrate.
Okay. Great.
All right, so this guy is a tiny piece. This is what I call a dimensional drawing. And this is a small piece created inside of a box structure that's right about 10 inches by 10 inches by 10 inches. I got to the point where, actually, specifically after working on this piece, I just thought, you know, I really love the idea of working with big spaces, but I don't have all of this space. You know, I only have this garage. I only have this little room in the front of my house, and they're all sort of overrun right now by all of this stuff. But I think I can think about big spaces in a small scale way by working inside of these small boxes. Right. So this is an example of that. And then this is another example. I was thinking a little bit about the work of M.C. Escher. You can see there's, well, it's difficult to see, but there is a mirror as the back wall of this piece, and all of the back surfaces, you see each of these horizontal elements that have the windows and the ladders. They're all painted fluorescent colors on the back. So as you move up to view the piece, and as you kind of look around inside of it, you can see the colors on the back surfaces in the very back mirrored surface.
Nice.
Still, these dimensional drawings, This was another example of, this one is about, I want to say 24 inches by 19 inches by about 2 inches deep. This weird fading effect that's happening around the edges of this is not a camera effect, and it's not a mess up. It is actually just pencil shading the way that I drew it, for the purpose of creating this sort of focus into the middle of the piece, like really pulling you into it.
So creating an illusionistic space to go along with the actual.
Closer up. Yes.
Okay.
Playing with in 2D space. Detail images, you can see the very small objects inside of this thing. These are the objects that are sitting on this little shelf in the middle. They're actual objects, not drawn objects.
Right. So there's a play of both objects and the drawn.
Yes. All right, then moving into some continued recent drawings. This is Sight Cycle Split. This is a 10-inch by 10-inch drawing. So you can see in some of the more recent drawings that I've made, this guy as well from this past summer. Still thinking about space, ideas of how can you create a complex space, hiding things, masking things out with layers of paint, revealing things, is really, really what I'm into. And I keep thinking, how can I make this happen in an installation space? Not sure about that. Layers of transparency, layers of opacity. And then also recently, I've been really into ideas of working with plant forms and more organic sourced imagery. So this is something I'm not totally sure how it's going to play out in future works, but it's something I'm really excited about.
Yeah, the organic
and
form.
That's it.
Oh, well, the organic form combined with the geometric form, it has a very interesting balance, juxtaposition to it. How do you feel about those, the two things that doesn't seem to quite match? But well, what is your attraction to it?
I'm just really interested in the idea of dichotomy in general.
Okay.
Because it's something we all experience every day. You know, it's how do I feel one way but feel another way at the same time? Or how do I experience things so differently from one moment to the next? You know, just an idea of balancing is something that I think I grapple with psychologically and emotionally, and it's something that I'm really interested in conveying and sussing out in images.
Okay. So I noticed a lot of squares, a lot of checkerboard patterns. Well, how did that start? Why is it always present in your work? What does that mean to you?
Yeah. The checkerboard, what does the checkerboard mean?
Yeah.
Can you see me again?
No, not
How
quite.
should I go back to me?
You gotta get out of screen share.
Okay.
The button on.
Let me see if I can do it. Can you see me now?
Yes.
Okay. Hi again. Checkerboarding is one of these weird things for me because I actually think of it as relating to both the natural world and the man-made world. Like we think about checkerboards relating to games, relating to like race car patterns. But then there are also these really interesting handmade aspects to checkerboards too. Like if you think about quilting, and also when you hand draw a checkerboard as opposed to actually drawing it out with a ruler, it has this really interesting, regular but sort of inconsistent and wonky feel, just the hand-drawn quality of it. So I think that checkerboards really do embody that sort of idea of dichotomy for me that I'm interested in. They're everything to me. I know that they seem more man-made and more geometric, but I see them encompassing all things.
Okay, sounds good. Any questions from you guys?
So thanks for looking at my work.
You're welcome. Yeah.
What? I couldn't hear that. Was that a question?
There's a question, yes.
What kind of reaction did you get from your audience, like about your work?
What kind of responses do you get from your?
What kind of response do I get from my audience? I guess it varies. I mean, typically positive. People are interested. People often ask about the colors as well. Yeah, typically positive, supportive.
Good.
More questions, or did you want to go into depth on that?
Oh, you can if you like, but here's another question.
I was interested in
the
materials that you use for like your ladders and stuff. Are you building these out of wood, or are they out of like foam or like cardboard or something like that? And I guess just
they are wood.
Okay. Just as like general.
Yeah.
Do you reuse the ladders or any of the structures? I guess like when you create a new space or sculpture, do you reuse stuff from previous ones, or are they all stay with their own kind of?
Are they all new?
Yeah.
They have all been reused so far. Okay. At some point, I most likely will have to fabricate a whole new batch of them, and I'm gonna go crazy when that happens. But it's gonna happen.
Well, there's a lot of in your pattern, in your style, in your drawing hand. There seems to be a lot of style that seems very computer illustrated type feel or aesthetics to it. Sorry. Do you ever thought about using a computer drawing or maybe some type of 3D printer to make these ladders or anything like that, to kind of give you the assistance, or do you feel like that takes away from your purpose?
For the smaller pieces, the smaller like model-based works, I think that could be really helpful. Because I'm not against. For some pieces, I'm not against the idea of having help manufacturing these things, but in cases of the drawing, a lot of the time it is really important to me to have the hand-drawn quality of it, because I think it does convey this sort of imperfect, slightly more organic feel to it.
Okay, so you want that quality of individuality within each drawing, is what you're kind of suggesting, or?
Yeah, I think individuality could be a good way of putting it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Or just the fact too that it's both.
Okay. Any other questions from anybody else?
I have one more.
Okay. One more question.
How does creating the small scale ones? Are there things from there that are new that you don't experience or encounter making the large ones, and then do you use that when you make a larger one, or vice versa?
Yeah, the awesome about this working with the smaller box pieces has been really the experience of taking over an entire space. When you look into those things, if you imagine like scale, having the patterning, the entire patterning that wraps all the way around from the ceiling, down the walls, down to the floor, that is the kind of immersive space that I am really, really excited about. And it's just not something that I've gotten to the point of making yet. So there are definitely things that happen in those works that I am so pumped about figuring out how to make them happen in real life. I don't know yet, but I really want to. Also, the idea, the piece with the mirror in the background, I keep thinking about if that were a room, that would be so exciting. So I'm hoping that it can happen.
Nice.
Great. Well, I think that about wraps it up. There we go. So Nikki, thank you for joining us today. It's been a wonderful presentation, and I immensely enjoyed your work.
Thank you for having me.
So until next time.
Thank you very much.
yeah, we're checking out. Thank you, Nikki Painter. Please check out her website at, what's your website, Nikki?
Oh, my website?
Yes.
NikkiPainter.com.
Okay. All right. Until next time, we're checking out. Take care.
Thanks. Bye, guys.